The certified courier reached the driveway while I was carrying an empty pitcher toward the garage. Grant stood beside the leased van with one hand resting on its polished side panel. Two front-load washers sat behind him on black display mats. Their stainless doors reflected the folding chairs, the open garage, and three property owners drinking iced tea beneath Pamela's striped patio umbrella. A vinyl map of the county had been clipped to a presentation board. 6 red dots. 24 machines. Recurring revenue, according to Grant. The courier walked between the van and the washers without looking at the map. Grant Holt? Grant turned with the same smile he had been using for the owners. That's me. The courier held out a small electronic pad. Signature required. Grant did not ask what he was signing for. He kept talking while his finger moved across the screen. We are in a controlled expansion phase. The route already has the technical infrastructure. Today is about aligning capital with scale. The courier handed him 3 flat envelopes. One preserved my denial of the equipment guarantee. One addressed the claim involving my grandmother's reserve account. The third required Grant to preserve the route, payment, and delivery records tied to both disputes. Grant's smile remained in place for perhaps 2 seconds. I stood near the garage, holding the empty pitcher by its plastic handle. Condensation ran down the outside and gathered against my knuckles. The property owners were close enough to read Grant's face. Pamela was close enough to see the name on the first envelope. Uncle Bryce stopped chewing the ice from his cup. And before I tell you what Grant said when he finally understood what had been delivered, I need to explain why 2 spotless machines beside a rented van were enough to put $68,200 under my name. 4 days earlier, I was kneeling behind a roadside motel washer with concrete grit inside my right knee pad. The outer shell had split along the inner seam 2 months before. Gray foam showed through the opening. Every time I knelt, small pieces of grit worked beneath the fabric and pressed directly against my kneecap. New pads cost $46, so I wrapped the torn foam with narrow strips cut from discarded drain hose packaging. The plastic held for 2 or 3 jobs before the edges curled. That morning, one strip had loosened and folded beneath my knee while I removed the pump housing. The washer smelled of standing water, detergent concentrate, and whatever had been left inside a guest's pockets during the previous cycle. A bent brass key lay in the drain cup beside 2 coins and a piece of red thread. I set each part in a metal tray. Pump cover, gasket, impeller, foreign objects. The motel manager stood in the doorway asking how long the machine would remain out of service. 20 minutes if the motor tests clean. He looked at the open cabinet. Can't you just reset it? No. The display showed a drain error. The actual problem was a thread wrapped behind the impeller and a bearing beginning to drag under load. A control panel could clear its own warning. The motor still had to move water. I held the pump body in one hand and connected the test leads with the other. The motor started. The bearing produced a low, uneven sound beneath the normal hum. Not loud, not yet, but it was there. My grandfather Roy had taught me to listen for that difference before I was tall enough to reach his workbench without standing on a crate. He repaired municipal pumps for 32 winters. He carried the same 1-liter steel thermos until the base became rounded from being set on concrete. The thermos sat inside my service truck that morning, dented near the handle. Rough seam beneath the grip. Permanent smell of black coffee and iron-heavy tap water. Roy had engraved my initials under the base after I completed my first valve rebuild without stripping the screws. LH. The letters were shallow and crooked. I checked them sometimes when the rest of the family described Grant as the person carrying Roy's legacy. The motel pump ran for 11 seconds. I cut the power. Bearing is worn, I told the manager. It will drain now, but it needs replacement before it locks. He asked whether the machine could remain open for the weekend. I wrote the risk on the service sheet. Actual cycle count. Serial number. Water valve condition. Drain time. Motor sound. Recommended replacement. The company charged technicians for inventory that disappeared from trucks, so every serial and removed part had to match a ticket. No machine existed in our records because somebody said it existed. A unit entered the route through an installation sheet. It remained there through meter photographs, serial scans, drainage tests, chemical settings, cycle history, and service calls. Inputs, ops, where. The machine could not skip all three and still be real. At 10:42, my phone vibrated against the metal top of the service cart. Grant had sent a photograph of himself standing beside a white commercial van in front of a glass apartment tower. Dark jacket, open collar, one hand in his pocket. Across the side of the van was a removable vinyl logo, Holt Recurring Systems. His message read, "Presentation asset secured." The van was leased. The apartment tower was not one of his claimed laundry locations. I knew because I serviced that building for another company. Its laundry room used card-operated machines owned by the property manager, not Grant. The photograph was about the lobby glass, the height of the building, the impression that somebody inside had approved of him. Grant called wages a trap for people without vision. He said my job taught me to maintain other people's systems instead of building my own. That afternoon, he posted the van photograph beside a caption about family legacy. Pamela shared it before she called to ask whether I could pick up Evelyn's groceries. My electrical safety certification ceremony began at 6. I had studied for the exam during unpaid lunch periods and inside my truck between service calls. Arc flash calculations, lockout procedures, ground fault testing, motor controls. The certification allowed me to take higher-risk commercial work without waiting for another technician. Pamela had promised to attend. She arrived at the training center carrying her handbag and a paper cup of coffee. For 9 minutes, she sat beside me in the second row. Then Grant called. He needed someone to hold a reflector while Bryce photographed him with the van at sunset. Pamela said the pictures had to look professional before the local business breakfast saw them. She stood while the instructor was explaining the ceremony order. "I'll be back before they call your name." She was not. At 7:18, the instructor pronounced Holt correctly and handed me the certificate. 4 people clapped. A technician from another company took a photograph with my phone. Pamela's empty chair appeared on the edge of the frame. That evening, she posted Grant's van photograph. Finally building the family legacy Roy always dreamed about. No mention of the certification, no question about my exam score. I placed the framed certificate on my workbench beside Roy's thermos and drove Evelyn to the pharmacy before it closed. Grandmother Evelyn lived in the lower half of the family duplex. Pamela controlled the account holding Evelyn's medical and housing reserve. I paid most of the ordinary expenses that came between large medical bills. Groceries, fuel, transportation, small home care supplies. The plumbing repairs Pamela called emergencies after ignoring leaks for weeks. Grant attended business breakfasts and told relatives he was creating enough recurring income to protect everyone later. Later had no date. My payments did. Pamela praised my reliability whenever the refrigerator needed filling. Then she told me Grant needed space to build something meaningful. He was gifted. I was durable. Grant understood opportunity. I understood work. That was the arrangement. 3 days before the driveway presentation, Grant asked me to help prepare his equipment route for refinancing. He used the word help because partner would have required asking. We met inside Pamela's garage. 2 washers stood near the open door beneath clear shipping plastic. A folding table held branded folders, empty detergent bottles, a dosing pump, lengths of new hose, and printed photographs of apartment laundry rooms. Uncle Bryce leaned against a workbench drinking bottled tea. He had sold used restaurant and laundry equipment before moving into referral work. He introduced Grant to property owners who wanted machines without paying large installation costs up front. Bryce pointed at the knee pads hanging from my tool bag. "There she is, the girl who cleans filters while men build portfolios." Grant laughed. Pamela smiled. as though Bryce had complimented me. I unwrapped one washer. The transit bolts remained installed in the rear panel. A machine with those bolts in place could not complete normal spin cycles without shaking across the floor.
Where did these come from? I asked.
Route inventory. They have shipping bolts. They were transported for the presentation. From which location?
Grant looked at the printed map.
East Riverton. Which building? He tapped one red dot without giving an address. We need you focused on readiness, not interrogating the model.
That was when I decided to appear supportive.
Not agreeable. Supportive. Grant believed those were the same thing. I asked for the complete route list so I could prepare service coverage. He gave me 6 addresses. I asked for serial numbers so I could check parts compatibility. He opened a spreadsheet. I asked for estimated cycles because detergent settings depended on volume. He gave me daily totals. I asked which buildings had hard water. He said all of them had standard municipal supply. By the time Bryce finished his tea, I had 24 declared machines, 6 claimed locations, serials, model numbers, cycle estimates, launch dates. Grant thought he had assigned me work. He had given me the route's physical claims. Pamela brought out a tray of glasses. Lena, can you fill these? Grant was explaining the refinancing presentation to 2 property owners on speakerphone. He pointed at the table while he spoke, assigning each object a role in his story. Dosing equipment, service infrastructure, replacement inventory, field support. I poured tea, collected the plastic wrap, wiped fingerprints from the washer doors, carried empty boxes deeper into the garage. One of the property owners asked whether Grant had an experienced maintenance partner. Grant looked at me while answering. My sister handles lower-level execution. I built the operating model. I tightened the hose fitting on the demonstration unit. No water line was connected. No drain existed behind the machine. The control panel lit because Grant had run an extension cord from the wall. The machine could display a cycle. It could not complete one. Grant continued talking about scalability. Manual workers, he said, remained poor because they optimized pennies instead of building systems. I looked down at my repaired knee pad. The strip of drain hose packaging had started separating again. Pamela asked me to gather the loose presentation materials from the floor. Near the table leg was a detergent dosing nozzle. Clear plastic chamber, black check valve, blue adjustment collar. Grant had marked it with a label reading, Root sample, 400 plus cycles. I picked it up. The inner chamber was dry, not recently dried. Unused. No detergent stain around the intake ridge. No mineral film. No residue inside the check valve. The gasket retained a perfect circular shape with no compression mark from being seated in a dosing line. I opened my service truck and removed a used nozzle from the returns bin. The real one had white mineral crust around the threads. Blue detergent had stained the chamber wall. The check valve edge was worn slightly to one side. A chemical pump had pulled against it thousands of times. I placed both nozzles beneath the truck light. One component had carried liquid. The other had carried a label. Grant appeared beside the open truck door. What are you doing? Checking the sample. It came from the route. Which location? Why? The water at East Riverton leaves mineral film within a week. His eyes moved toward the used nozzle, then back to the clean one. It was flushed for presentation. With what? He smiled, not because the question amused him, because smiling made technical resistance look small. This is what I mean about technician thinking. You get trapped inside component details and miss the business. A route is component details. A route is customer acquisition. Machines still need water. He lowered his voice. Lena, I need you aligned. Pamela is already stressed, and Grandma's care depends on this refinance moving forward. I held the dry nozzle. What does Grandma's care have to do with it? Everything is connected. That answer told me less than he intended and more than he realized. Grant took the nozzle from my hand and returned it to the presentation table. Clean the demo panels before you leave. I did, slowly. The Trojan horse only worked if he believed I was inside it for him. That night, I set the used and unused nozzles side by side on my workbench. Roy's thermos stood behind them. I remembered being 13, listening to the circulation pump he had placed on the wooden table behind his house. The motor ran. The casing looked clean. I told him the pump was fine. He asked me to listen again. I guessed that the impeller was loose. Wrong. Roy poured coffee into the thermos lid and waited. Then he placed 2 fingers against the pump housing and let me feel the uneven vibration beneath the metal. A machine could keep turning long enough to fool the eyes. Real load appeared somewhere else. Sound. Heat. Wear. Grant's route had photographs. A van. A map. Serial numbers. Debt, apparently. The nozzle had no load history at all. At 11:26, his equipment summary arrived by email. 24 leased units. 6 service locations. Projected monthly revenue. Equipment obligation. $68,200. I scrolled to the guarantor page. Legal name, Lena Marie Holt. Business registration. The sole proprietor's service registration I had closed 2 years earlier. Signature. My name, drawn with the long upward final stroke I used before Roy's hands became too weak to engrave tools. The shape was close. The pressure was wrong. I was kneeling beside the workbench when I opened it. Concrete grit inside the torn knee pad pressed deeper as I shifted forward. I did not stand. My mouth dried. The screwdriver in my right hand tightened between my fingers until the handle ridge hurt. Grant sent another message. Need you fully aligned before refinance day. The route had debt. It had my name. It had 24 declared machines. I still had not found one piece of evidence that any of them had completed a paid cycle. At 7:08 the next morning, I printed the guarantee at Pamela's kitchen table. Grant was already there. He wore the same dark jacket from the van photographs, though the sleeves had begun creasing where he kept pushing them toward his elbows. A leather portfolio rested beside his coffee. Across the cover, his initials had been stamped in gold. G.H. Pamela stood at the stove turning bacon that nobody had asked for. Evelyn sat near the window with both hands around a cup of warm water. Her doctor had reduced her coffee, but Pamela still left Roy's old mug in front of her, as though the smell counted as participation. I placed the guarantor page between Grant and me. My name is on this. He glanced down. No surprise. No confusion. Just annoyance that I had reached the page before refinancing day. You received the full package? That is your response? It matters whether you received the complete context. You copied my signature. Pamela stopped moving the fork for half a second. Grant leaned back. You are treating a temporary liquidity compression like a moral event. It is $68,200. It is equipment backed. The route does not exist. His expression changed then. Not fear. Professional disappointment. The look he used when speaking to a waiter who had interrupted a business breakfast. You have seen 2 presentation units. I have seen a dry dosing nozzle labeled 400 cycles. It was cleaned. The gasket was never seated. You are evaluating enterprise value through a technician's detail. A machine route is made of technician details. Grant looked toward Pamela. This is exactly why I did not burden her with the financing structure until it was mature. I turned the page toward her. He used my old registration. Pamela lowered the burner and placed the fork beside the stove. Grant should have asked. He forged the guarantee. And you should not come into Grandma's kitchen speaking like a collection agency. The sentence landed so quickly that she must have prepared it before I arrived. Grant made a mistake. I made a family communication problem by naming it. Pamela walked to the table and flattened one corner of the page. Both of you have damaged trust. I looked at my copied signature. What did I sign? You are escalating, she said.
What did I take?
Nobody said you took anything.
Then what is my side? She turned toward the stove again.
You have always needed everything done your way. Grant picked up his coffee. The family needed one bankable profile. Yours had unused capacity. My credit is not capacity. Everything has capacity. Grandma's reserve too? The coffee stopped near his mouth. Pamela answered before he did. That money is protected. Grant said her care depends on refinancing. He means future care. Evelyn looked from one of us to the other. What money? Pamela lifted the bacon from the pan. Nothing you need to worry about. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the cup. That phrase had become another closed door in the duplex. Nothing you need to worry about. Nothing you need to see. Nothing you need to sign personally because Pamela handled the difficult parts. I asked Grant for every installation ticket connected to the route. He smiled. You are not auditing me. My registration is listed as service operator. You are the mechanical partner.
I never agreed to that.
You benefited from the association.
How?
Visibility, positioning, access to ownership. I repaired the machines you used in photographs.
Exactly.
He set down the cup and leaned forward.
Your credit was idle capacity, Lena, and I converted it into an opportunity you were too small-minded to recognize.
Evelyn inhaled sharply. Pamela said his name in a warning tone. Grant did not take it back. That was the problem with polished language. It let him say the ugliest thing in the room and still feel managerial. I gathered the pages. Pamela asked where I was going. To work.
The presentation is tomorrow.
I know. Grant needs your support. He has my signature. She followed me to the hallway. If you challenge this now, the family's credit could be damaged. My credit is already attached. The duplex could be affected. How? Everything is connected.
Grant's phrase.
Same exact shelter. Pamela lowered her voice. Grandma cannot be moved again. Evelyn had not moved in 12 years. The threat did not need to be specific. Pamela only had to place Evelyn's housing beside my objection and let me carry both. I left without answering. At 9:24, I sat inside the service truck behind a 4-story apartment building and opened Grant's route spreadsheet. 14 washers, 10 dryers. The claimed cycle volume averaged 6 paid turns per machine each day. I started with the lowest plausible water draw, not the manufacturer's average. 17 gallons per washer cycle. 14 washers. 6 cycles. 1,428 gallons per day. More than 42,000 gallons every 30 days. And that assumed no rinse heavy settings, no maintenance flushes, no leaking valves, and no machines running above Grant's own declared average. The dryers required their own electrical load. The dosing pumps required chemical use. Every washer required drainage. 24 machines operating across 6 buildings would leave something behind. Water, current, lint, detergent orders, drain complaints, valve replacements. One machine could hide inside a building's normal variation. 24 could not disappear cleanly. I wrote the minimum monthly water figure on the back of a service envelope, 42,840 gallons. Then I calculated detergent draw using the smallest programmed dose compatible with the pumps Grant listed. The result was more than 30 gallons of concentrate per month. His presentation inventory showed 2 sealed 5-gallon containers. No purchase orders, no refill schedule, no chemical supplier. The route had photographs, speeches, and debt. It did not have cycles. My meal break lasted 23 minutes. I used 14 of them on the manufacturer's public model and warranty lookup. The first 2 serials returned valid models, but no warranty activation or delivery date. Grant's photographs showed both machines beside the same cracked gray wall visible in a distributor's public inventory gallery. That was a lead, not proof. The third and fourth serials returned only model and manufacture data. Both numbers looked familiar from disposal work I had completed months earlier. But memory was not a record. I saved the public pages with the serials and access time, marked showroom and disposal status as unverified, and returned to work. Then I returned to work. A dryer at the apartment building had stopped heating. The lint channel behind the lower panel was packed solid. Not surface lint. A compressed layer that had been building for months because the property maintenance team cleaned only the removable screen. The dryer still turned. Clothes still moved. The display still counted minutes. No heat reached the drum. Motion was not proof of useful work. I removed the packed lint, checked the temperature rise, and entered the repair into the ticket. At lunch, I checked 4 more serials. One belonged to a model manufactured 2 years after Grant's claimed launch date. 3 could not be matched to his listed locations. At 3:16, I sent a narrow question to the first property owner on his route list. I used my personal email, identified myself as the technician who had previously serviced the building, and stated that I was verifying equipment listed beneath a guarantee bearing my name. I did not use my employer's account. Were new commercial laundry units connected to water and drainage at your property during March or April? No accusation. No request for tenant records. The owner replied 11 minutes later. No, we received a proposal but did not proceed. Second location. No installation occurred. Third, we allowed photographs in the loading area. No equipment was accepted. The red dots on Grant's vinyl map began separating from the physical world. At 5:42, Pamela called. Your grandmother's pharmacy card declined. I was driving between service calls. How much? $263. Use the reserve account. There is a hold. What kind of hold? I don't understand the bank language. Send me the notice. It is probably temporary. Grandma needs the prescription. Then pay it and we will reimburse you. There it was. Pamela managed $34,000 in medical and housing savings. I was being asked to cover $263 because the accessible money had become inaccessible only when Evelyn needed it. I paid the pharmacy directly over the phone. Then I asked Evelyn to call me when Pamela was not in the room. She called at 7:03. Her voice was low. Pam says the money is in certificates. What certificates? She said medical certificates, ones I can take out when I need them. Have you seen a statement? No. Did you authorize Grant to use any of it? A pause. He said the business would keep us all safe. That wasn't my question. No. I pulled the truck into a vacant service lane and shut off the engine. Do you want me to review the account? Yes. I need written authorization. Bring it. No hesitation. No helplessness. Evelyn knew exactly what she was asking. At 8:12, I delivered the authorization form to the duplex. Pamela stood behind Evelyn's chair while she signed. You are turning Grandma against me. Evelyn kept writing. Her hand moved slowly, but the signature remained steady. I asked her, she said. Pamela looked at Grant, who stood near the kitchen doorway checking messages. Do you see what Lena is doing? Grant did not look up. She is creating friction before a capital event. I took the signed form. Grandma's prescription was declined. Pamela folded her arms. That was a bank delay. Then the statements will show it. Grant slipped the phone into his jacket. You need to stop confusing access with ownership. The money belongs to Grandma. It belongs to the family care strategy. Evelyn capped the pen. It belongs to me. The room went quiet. Grant recovered first. Of course, we are discussing deployment, not ownership. He could rename anything before the silence finished settling. I left with the authorization. At 10:37, the overhead light inside the parts cage shut off. The timer did that every 15 minutes, unless someone moved near the door. I was sitting too far inside for the sensor to catch me. Shelves of valves, pumps, motors, and boxed controls disappeared into darkness.
My phone screen lit the cardboard back of a valve package.
I wrote $68,200.
Then my monthly pay. Rent. Fuel. Insurance. Evelyn's groceries. Transportation. Medication gaps.
Minimum payment while the guarantee was disputed.
The first month ended below zero.
So did the second.
Third. Fourth. I changed the fuel estimate.
Still negative. Reduced groceries. Negative.
Removed every non-essential expense I could identify.
9 months.
9 negative totals.
The cardboard had been curved around the valve box. Each time I pressed it flat against the concrete floor, the edges lifted again. My repaired knee pad had filled with grit during the last job. I removed it and shook the debris into a parch tray. Small gray stones struck the metal. Tick, tick, tick.
What would you subtract first?
Food? Fuel needed to reach work? The insurance protecting your own tools? An elderly woman's medication because your brother had already converted her reserve into something he called a family strategy? I pressed both hands against the cardboard. The arithmetic did not move.
Pamela's warning returned.
Grandma cannot be moved again. Grant had placed the debt beneath my name because he knew I could not ignore it. Damaged credit would affect any apartment I tried to lease for Evelyn. Collection notices would reach the registration my employer associated with me. Even disproving the route would cost time, certified records, and missed service work. Reliability had become the collateral.
They praised it because they intended to borrow against it.
My phone vibrated. The reserve account authorization had been accepted. Statements were available through the bank's secure caregiver portal. I opened the first month.
A recurring transfer appeared.
Not a medical certificate, not a care provider. Property management company. 1-bedroom apartment.
Across town.
The same amount repeated the following month.
Then utilities. Furniture delivery.
Another transfer labeled household setup.
My stomach tightened.
The total was not visible yet. I had only opened 3 statements.
But the account was not frozen.
It was being spent. I closed the portal before reviewing the remaining pages. Not because I wanted to protect Grant, because I was too tired to look at 2 kinds of theft inside the same dark room.
The cardboard curled upward again.
I flattened it. At work, a machine could not enter the next stage without an input. Water before drainage. Current before heat. Installation before service. Grant's route claimed outputs with no matching consumption. The family claimed Evelyn was protected while her reserve paid an unknown apartment. They claimed I was a partner while hiding the guarantee. Every benefit had a predecessor. Somebody selected the account. Somebody copied the signature. Somebody entered the address. The helplessness arrived afterward. Always afterward. When the action had already produced money. When the useful button had already been found. Then Pamela did not understand bank language. Grant did not understand why ownership mattered. Both of them understood enough to place the liability where I would be forced to respond. I had spent years confusing endurance with proof that I could handle more. Fix the duplex plumbing. Drive Evelyn. Pay the pharmacy. Keep Grant's machines running. Do not upset Pamela. Do not embarrass the gifted child. But there was no part of the family plan reserved for my life. Only another obligation waiting for my name. I stopped coding their confusion as innocence. At 11:09, the parts cage light came back on when Samir opened the outer door. He rented a workbench behind the service shop and stored old brass fittings in coffee tins arranged by thread size. He saw the cardboard beneath my hands. Did not ask to read it. You locking up? In a minute. Samir nodded and moved toward his bench. Roy's thermos stood beside my tool bag. I picked it up. The steel felt heavier in the dark. Not magical. Just thick enough to survive 32 winters and every floor Roy had set it on.
I opened the reserve statements again.
1 month at a time. Apartment rent. Electric service. Furniture. Groceries delivered to the same address.
By the final page, $34,000 had left Evelyn's account. The payment references identified the unit.
Grant had not used her reserve to build a machine route.
He had used it to build another household. Before leaving, I returned to the serial list.
2 showroom machines.
2 scrapped machines. 1 impossible model year.
3 properties confirming no installation.
Minimum water demand above 42,000 gallons a month. The route did not merely look weak. Its claimed operation required physical inputs that had never reached the listed buildings.
At 11:46, I sent 3 more owners the same narrow question.
Then I placed the dry dosing nozzle, the copied guarantee, Evelyn's authorization, and the first reserve statement inside separate clear sleeves. No confrontation. Not yet. First, the route had to disappear on paper exactly where it had never existed in the world. At 6:18 the next morning, the first utility summary arrived from Meadow Court Apartments. The property owner had removed tenant account details and sent only the building totals for the 6 months surrounding Grant's claimed installation date. I opened the attachment from the passenger seat of my service truck. March, April, May, June, no rise. Water use had actually fallen during the month Grant's spreadsheet identified as route launch. Not by much. Enough to matter. His 4 declared washers at Meadow Court required a minimum of 12,240 gallons every 30 days, even using the smallest cycle count and lowest water setting I could justify. The entire building had used 900 fewer gallons after the alleged installation. A commercial route could not run on negative water. I saved the owner's email in its original form, then exported the attachment with the sender, date, and property address visible. The second owner replied at 6:41. No machines installed, no plumbing work performed, no contract signed. The third sent a photograph of the laundry room. 2 residential top-load washers. 1 dryer with a coin slide that had been taped over years earlier. None matched Grant's list. I compared the room to his presentation photograph. Same painted cinder block wall, same narrow window, but Grant's image had been taken inside the loading bay, where the property owner had allowed Bryce to stage equipment for less than an hour. The machines never crossed the service threshold. No water connections, no drains, no electrical work. Just a camera angle narrow enough to remove the loading door. At 7:02, my first service call began. A motel dryer produced heat, but shut down after 11 minutes. The exhaust temperature rose too quickly because the exterior vent hood had jammed half closed. I climbed behind the building, cleared the obstruction, then photographed the temperature change before and after service. 198 degrees before, 152 after. A machine under load always left a number. Temperature, water use, current draw, cycle count, something. Grant's route left only his own estimates. During my meal break, I opened the public model and warranty lookup again. The 5th serial returned a valid model with no warranty activation. A current distributor gallery showed a machine with the same torn factory sticker and the same pin mark above the serial plate. But the public listing did not reveal its serial. Grant had used what appeared to be that unit in his route presentation. The visual match was a lead. The distributor still had to confirm the serial through its own inventory records. His photograph showed the machine beside a brick wall. The distributor's image showed it against gray paneling. Different background. Same unit. I called the showroom's public sales number. "I'm verifying a serial connected to a disputed equipment guarantee," I said. "Is unit WQ88214 currently part of your sale inventory?" The representative placed me on hold for 4 minutes, then confirmed the machine was still on their floor and had never been delivered. I asked for written confirmation. He said he could email an inventory statement if I supplied the inquiry number and explained that I was not requesting purchaser information. I sent the request. No threat, no accusation. One serial, one status. The confirmation arrived at 12:03. Still in distributor inventory. No delivery record. The sixth serial belonged to a dryer I recognized from a roadside motel 40 miles west. The drum support had failed so badly that the rear bearing cut into the metal housing. Repair would have cost more than the unit's remaining value. I had completed the disposal ticket myself. Serial scan. Condition photographs. Scrap authorization. The machine had been crushed 5 months before Grant claimed it entered service. I showed the serial and the disputed guarantee to my supervisor, Mara Chen, before opening the archive. I asked whether the company could perform a limited serial search and release any matching record through its ordinary records process. She read the request twice.
Is this Grant?
Yes.
Did you install machines for him?
No.
Did anyone here?
That is what I need the records to answer. Mara opened the records release form. She explained that the company could confirm what appeared in its own installation, service, and disposal history, but could not certify that no other company had touched a machine. That limit mattered. After she approved a serial-only search and assigned an internal request number, she opened the archive beside me. The disposal record appeared. Serial scan. Condition photographs. Scrap authorization. I did not export it until Mara approved the release. Then, she searched Grant's remaining serials across the company archive. No installation tickets, no meter photographs, no service acceptance forms, no drainage tests, no serial intake scans. Grant had listed my employer as the maintenance operator on all 24 units. Our system showed none of them entering the route. Mara printed a summary. Does this put us in the middle? It removes the company from his claim. She looked at the equipment guarantee. My old sole proprietor registration appeared beneath the service operator field. You closed this registration 2 years ago. Do you have the closure confirmation? Yes. Include it. Routine question. Useful answer. At 1:18, I sat in the break room with Roy's thermos between both hands. The coffee had cooled enough to taste metallic. I arranged the root evidence on my cracked phone. 6 property addresses. 24 declared machines, 14 washers, 10 dryers, 6 cycles per unit per day. Minimum washer water, minimum chemical consumption, expected electrical demand, required drainage. Then the real records. 3 owners denying installation, 1 owner confirming photographs only, 2 units still at the showroom, 2 serials tied to scrapped machines, no service intake under my company, no installation ticket under my registration. The table still had empty rows. I did not fill them with assumptions. The 4th property owner had not responded. The 5th said the building had changed managers and asked for more time. The 6th confirmed that Grant had discussed installing machines, but said he needed to check whether any temporary demonstration had occurred. Incomplete evidence was still incomplete. I marked those rows pending. Grant would later call that uncertainty proof that the route might exist. It was not. It meant 3 locations required more documents. The confirmed rows already made his stated route impossible. At 1:31, the first utility owner asked why I needed the water calculation. I replied, "The guarantee identifies me as service operator for 4 commercial washers at your property. The stated cycle volume would create measurable water demand. I am confirming whether the equipment was installed and operating." He answered, "No equipment was installed or operating under that arrangement." I saved the message. Truth be told, the most frightening part was how ordinary the disproof looked. No hidden account, no dramatic photograph of Grant caught moving machines at night. A building used almost the same water it had always used. A serial stayed in a showroom.
A disposal ticket remained attached to a unit that no longer existed. The route failed through absence. That is difficult to explain to people who think photographs are evidence of work. A photograph shows what stood in front of a camera for 1 second. Consumption shows what continued after the camera left. At 2:04, Pamela sent me a message. Grant says you are contacting his clients and damaging family income. I replied, I am contacting properties listed under a guarantee bearing my name. You could have asked him. I did. He says you are looking for reasons to fail. I stared at that sentence while the break room refrigerator compressor started behind me. Looking for reasons to fail. As though water had chosen sides. As though a serial number became resentful because I checked it. I did not answer. Grant called 5 minutes later. Stop contacting owners. My name is on their service records. You are creating concern where none existed. 3 say there was no installation. Those were pre-launch locations. Your spreadsheet lists launch dates. The dates were projections. They are labeled active. You are reading an internal planning file as though it were a contract. The equipment guarantee uses the same locations. His silence lasted long enough that I heard someone speaking near him. A woman, not Pamela. Grant covered the phone, then returned. The presentation tomorrow will resolve this. How? Capital closes, equipment deploys. The projections become operations. You guaranteed equipment as operating before deployment. You are stuck on sequence. Yes. Businesses sell the future. Lenders still ask where the machines are. His voice hardened. You are not the decision maker. My name is the guarantee. For now. The words came too quickly. I wrote them down after the call ended. Not as proof, as a reminder that Grant already imagined my name removable only after it had served him. At 2:42, I opened the lessor's consumer dispute page. The form asked whether I denied ownership, guarantee, delivery, installation, service acceptance. I checked all 5. Then it requested supporting documents. I uploaded the copy guarantee, my registration closure confirmation, employer statement showing no installation or service intake, serial lookup results, showroom inventory confirmation, scrap records, property owner responses, utility calculations, photographs of the dry dosing nozzle beside a used component. I wrote the explanation in narrow terms. I did not sign or authorize the attached guarantee. I did not accept delivery, installation responsibility, service operation, or ownership interest for the listed equipment. Available serial, utility, property owner, and service records do not support operation of the declared route. No statement about Grant's affair. No mention of Pamela. No reference to Evelyn's reserve. The lessor needed the equipment dispute. The family collapse could not make the machine evidence stronger. Before submitting, I reviewed every attachment. One property response contained a tenant's name in the forwarding header. I removed it and requested a clean copy from the owner. The utility table contained building totals only. The employer's summary stated exactly what its records could confirm. The showroom letter identified inventory status but no purchaser. The scrap tickets displayed serials and disposal dates. Each source stayed within its own boundary. I submitted the package at 3:17. The portal produced a case number. Ownership review opened. Pending disbursements associated with the disputed guarantee would be held while the lessor checked delivery, serial, and acceptance records. I saved the confirmation. At 3:29, Grant attempted to request the refinancing payout. I know because the lessor sent the disputed guarantor an automatic activity notice. Disbursement unavailable during ownership review. No flashing warning. No locked screen. A plain sentence beneath the request number. Grant submitted again at 3:36. Same result. At 3:41. Again. The portal remained functional. The request remained unavailable. At 3:48, he called. What did you do? I disputed the guarantee.
You had no authority to interfere with company funds.
I denied ownership of a company you placed under my name. You are sabotaging a performing asset. Which location is performing? All 6. Meadow Court used less water after your launch date. That building has conservation fixtures. 4 washers still require water. You do not understand blended usage. The showroom still has 2 of your listed units. Replacement inventory. You listed them as installed. Serials move. 2 other serials were scrapped. He exhaled hard into the phone. You have spent your life repairing old machines, and now you think that makes you qualified to judge a capital structure? No. I looked at the route table. It makes me qualified to recognize that 24 machines cannot run without entering water, power, drainage, chemical, serial, or service records somewhere. He did not answer. Then he said, "Tomorrow's presentation is still happening." I know. You will be there. Yes. The certainty surprised him. He expected resistance. I gave him support, the version he believed he had already purchased with my name. After the call, the 4th property owner replied, "No laundry installation, no water line modification, no electrical work." The 5th sent 2 monthly utility summaries. Water use remained within normal seasonal variation. The 6th manager found an old email exchange. Grant had requested permission to photograph 2 machines near the garage entrance and present the building as a potential route partner. The manager had written, "Photographs do not constitute an installation agreement." Grant replied, "Understood." I downloaded the entire exchange. The route map now had no confirmed operating location. Not one. The remaining claimed machines still needed serial review, but the business Grant described to the lender required 6 properties. All 6 denied operation. At 5:11, Mara called me into the service office. A message from the lessor's verification department had reached the company. They asked whether our employer had completed installation tickets for the serial list Grant submitted. Mara replied through the ordinary business channel. No matching installation, meter, serial intake, drainage test, or service acceptance records were identified. She showed me the response before sending it. Accurate? Yes. Anything else? The guarantee lists my closed registration, not the company. She added that clarification, then sent it. Grant had used my employment reputation to make the route credible. The same routine records now removed my employer from his claim. No counterattack. No clever trap. Just missing predecessor actions. A machine did not become installed because Grant entered an address. A service relationship did not exist because he typed my name. At 6:07, I returned to the parts cage. The cardboard calculations from the previous night remained beneath a box of inlet valves. I turned the sheet over. On the clean side, I wrote 6 claimed locations, 0 confirmed installations. Then 24 claimed machines, 2 still in showroom, 2 scrapped, no service acceptance, no installation records, no utility footprint. The numbers did not prove where every dollar had gone. They proved the route Grant used to justify the debt had not operated as represented. Roy's thermos rested on the shelf beside me. I removed the dry nozzle from its sleeve and held it beneath the cage light. Perfect gasket. Clear chamber. Unused edge. Grant had labeled it 400 cycles because he thought nobody in the family understood what 400 cycles left behind. He was right about most of them. Pamela saw a clean component and thought it looked professional. Bryce saw a label and thought it looked sellable. Property owners saw Lena Holt beneath the service field and assumed somebody qualified had checked it. Grant had borrowed my credibility because it was easier than building a route. My family only respected maintenance when neglecting it became expensive. At 6:29, the lessor updated the case. Ownership review active, equipment delivery and route operation unverified. The words were cautious. They did not rescind the guarantee yet. They did not accuse Grant.
But the route had lost the thing he needed most before the driveway presentation.
Presumption. The lessor no longer assumed the machines existed where he said they did. Grant would have to supply delivery receipts, installation records, and operating locations. He had photographs, speeches, a map. Tomorrow, 3 property owners would stand in Pamela's driveway while he tried to turn those objects back into a business.
I closed the portal. Then I opened Evelyn's reserve statements.
The route was already disappearing. It was time to find out what had been built in its place. The first reserve statement showed 3 payments to a property management company I did not recognize. The second showed 5. By the 6th month, the withdrawals had become regular enough to look ordinary. Rent, electric service, water, a furniture rental company, a grocery delivery charge billed to the same apartment unit. I sat inside my truck outside the service yard with Evelyn's authorization open beside the statements. The bank portal displayed her name at the top and mine beneath it as temporary document reviewer. No shared password. No account control. Read-only access granted by the owner of the money. The apartment payment reference included a street address across town. I entered it into the property manager's public resident payment page. The building offered 1-bedroom units, short leases, and furnished move-in packages. Nothing in the listing mentioned business storage. No loading dock, no workshop, no commercial use. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a small balcony facing the parking lot. Grant had described Evelyn's reserve as dormant capital protecting the family. The account had protected a second household. I opened the shared email used for Evelyn's pharmacy notices, care appointments, grocery deliveries, and home maintenance scheduling. I managed it because Pamela regularly forgot appointments, and Grant said administrative tasks kept him away from growth work. Search the apartment address. 7 messages. 2 furniture deliveries. 1 mattress delivery. 3 grocery windows. 1 electricity confirmation. Grant had used the household care email as the contact address because he did not want delivery messages appearing on the account Sloan used. The first furniture confirmation included a delivery photograph. A gray sofa stood inside an apartment doorway. Grant held one end. A woman I recognized from Grant's business posts held the other. Sloan Avery. She had worked in luxury apartment leasing before Grant began calling her his market development consultant. The second photograph showed Grant carrying a boxed dining table through the same door. Sloan stood inside wearing one of his presentation shirts over leggings. The apartment number was visible on the frame. The date matched a transfer from Evelyn's reserve. I downloaded the emails in their original format. Then I saved the delivery images separately with the sender, date, order number, and address. No crop. No caption. No attempt to make the photographs say more than they showed. Grant and Sloan had received household furniture at an apartment paid through Evelyn's account. That was enough. At 7:02, I called the property manager's public billing number. I'm reviewing payments authorized from an elder care account. Can you confirm whether the reference on the statement belongs to residential rent or a commercial unit? The representative asked for the reference number. I read it. Residential rent, she said. 1-bedroom apartment? Yes. Can you provide the tenant's identity? No. I'm not requesting it. I asked for written confirmation that the payment reference represented residential rent at the listed unit. The representative sent a standard billing description email. Residential lease payment. No tenant name. No private lease. 1 narrow fact. I added it to the file. At 7:19, Pamela called. Grandma says you showed her numbers she does not understand. I haven't shown her anything yet. She says you are reviewing the reserve. She authorized it. You pressured her. She asked me after her prescription was declined. That was one bank issue. $34,000 went to an apartment. The silence on the line changed. Not surprise. The sound of somebody choosing which part to deny first. What apartment? The one Grant and Sloan furnished.
Pamela breathed in sharply. Sloan is a consultant. The reserve pays the rent. You do not know that. The property manager confirmed the payment reference. Grant may be using the unit for business. Then why did you tell Grandma the money was in medical certificates? Pamela did not answer. I heard a cabinet close in the background. Then her voice became smaller. Do not say anything before tomorrow. Why? You will embarrass him in front of people. He used Grandma's money. If the refinance closes, it can be replaced. That sentence settled the issue. Pamela knew the reserve was gone. Maybe not where all of it went. Maybe not about Sloan. But she knew repayment depended on money Grant did not yet have. You told Grandma it was accessible. It will be. It wasn't available for her prescription. You paid that. Exactly. Because I always did, Pamela continued. Grant has worked for years toward this. The route has no operating locations. You are determined to see him fail. I checked the water. Listen to yourself. I checked the cereals. You are his sister. I checked my signature. Her breath moved close to the phone. Do not make me choose between my children. You chose before I called. I ended the call. My hands remained steady until the screen went dark. Then the tremor entered both thumbs, not because I had exposed her, because some part of me had still expected Pamela to hear apartment rent, furniture, and a declined prescription and ask whether Evelyn was safe. She asked whether Grant would be embarrassed. At 8:11, Grant added me to a group message titled, Driveway Capital Prep. Participants. Grant. Pamela. Bryce. Sloan. Me. He wrote, Lena is fully aligned as operations support. Keep tomorrow focused on scale and refinance. Sloan reacted with a raised hand symbol. Pamela wrote, Family first. Bryce sent a voice note 4 minutes later. The message began with Grant's name. Grant, keep Pamela away from the apartment subject tomorrow. She still thinks Sloan only uses it for client staging, and I am not losing my monthly introduction fee because Lena starts asking technician questions. A car door closed behind his voice. Bryce continued. The locations only need to hold together long enough for the refinancing package. Once funds clear, you can replace the showroom units and make the route real. The message lasted 38 seconds. It did not arrive by accident. Bryce knew I was in the thread. He believed Grant's claim that I had accepted my role. He believed I would continue protecting the presentation because the guarantee already carried my name. He thought silence had become my investment. The voice note remained visible for nearly 2 minutes. Then Bryce deleted it. The placeholder stayed inside the thread. Message removed. I had already exported the original audio. The audio file retained the sender, thread name, and timestamp. I also captured a screenshot showing Grant's statement that I was fully aligned, Bryce's sender line and timestamp, and the message removed placeholder directly beneath them. Bryce called me at 8:23. I did not answer. His text arrived next. That note was private business preparation. I replied, You posted it in a thread that includes me. You know what I meant. Yes. He called again, then wrote, Do not twist this. I introduced locations. I did not build the route. Another preserved statement. Bryce was already narrowing his role before anyone had accused him publicly. At 8:47, I opened the reserve total. The transfers tied to the apartment, deliveries, utilities, and grocery charges added to $34,000. Not near it. Exactly. The full amount Evelyn believed remained available for medical and housing needs. Grant had built no operating machine route. He had built rent, a sofa, a mattress, electric service, groceries for a separate address. The supposed expansion capital produced no customer payment and no equipment installation. It produced a place where Sloan kept one of Grant's shirts. I placed the reserve statements beside the route table. One column showed no water, no chemical, no drainage, and no installation. The other showed recurring residential expenses. The resource absence and the resource destination fit together. The money had not failed to create a route because Grant needed more time. It had been directed somewhere else from the beginning. At 9:16, I drove to the duplex. Evelyn sat in the rear room watching a game show with the volume low. Pamela stood near the front window holding her phone. Grant was not there. I placed the reserve statement in front of Evelyn. Not the apartment photographs. Not yet. First, the account she owned. These are recurring residential payments, I said. She touched the first line with one finger. Mine? Yes. How much? 34,000 total. All of it? Yes. Pamela entered the room. Works do not know what every payment represents. I placed the property manager's email beside the statement. Residential rent. Evelyn looked at her daughter. You said certificates. Pamela sat on the arm of the sofa. I was trying to keep you from worrying while Grant completed the business financing. You told me I could get the money. You can, after the refinance. It was mine before. Pamela pressed both palms together. Grant made a judgment under pressure. I placed the delivery photograph on the table. Grant and Sloane beside the gray sofa. Evelyn picked it up. Pamela did not. Who is she? Evelyn asked. Pamela's face changed. The muscles around her mouth drew inward. Sloane? Does she live there? I don't know. You knew about the apartment, I said. I knew there was a staging space. Did you know Grandma paid the rent? Grant said it was temporary. Did you know Bryce was receiving a fee to hide it? That reached her. Pamela's head lifted. What fee? I did not play the voice note yet. Grant would arrive soon. Bryce would be on the driveway the following day. Pamela needed to hear the audio where they could not privately build a replacement story before the notices appeared. I have Bryce's message, I said. What message? One he put in the presentation thread. Pamela stood. Play it. Tomorrow. Her face hardened. You are enjoying this. No. Then play it now. I want Grandma's statements copied first. You are controlling information exactly the way you accuse Grant of doing. Evelyn folded the apartment photograph once, then opened it again. Pamela. Her daughter stopped. I want Lena to keep the papers. Pamela looked at her mother. For perhaps the first time that morning, the usual words did not arrive. Evelyn continued. I want the bank to tell her if anything else leaves. Pamela's eyes filled. You don't trust me. Evelyn looked down at the statement. I trusted the certificates. No one spoke after that. I helped Evelyn complete the request for dual transaction notices. The bank would send an alert to her and to an independent contact for future withdrawals above the threshold she selected. She chose me. Pamela watched from the doorway. The form did not remove her as account manager. That required a separate review. It made another quiet withdrawal harder to hide. At 10:38, I returned to the service shop. Samir Patel was sorting brass fittings into coffee tins by thread size. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4. I said, Grant used my name. Pamela thinks stopping him is the same as hurting him. Samir tested one fitting with his thumbnail. Did he carry your part of the debt? No. Your grandmother's? No. He dropped the fitting into the correct tin. Blood tells you who arrived first. Loyalty tells you who stays when the load becomes heavy and does not leave your name under the machine. He reached for the next fitting. No speech about forgiveness, no promise about tomorrow. The sentence only removed the excuse I had been using. Grant had arrived in the family before the debt. That did not mean he had stayed beneath any of its weight. At 11:07, the civil representative coordinating my ownership denial and Evelyn's reserve claim sent an update. 3 notice packages from the same office had been assigned to a certified delivery service. The disputed business address was Pamela's duplex because Grant had listed the garage as the route's administrative office. The delivery window, 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. the following day. Signature required from Grant Holt. The tracking notice was visible to me because I was the disputed guarantor and Evelyn's authorized document reviewer. It provided only the address, recipient, and delivery window. At 11:19, Grant posted in the preparation thread, "Refinance documents arriving during presentation window. I will sign personally." He believed the envelopes would support his performance. He scheduled the property owners for 3. The certified delivery did not create the trap. Grant did. At 6:42 the next morning, I arrived at Pamela's house carrying my tool bag, the route table, and 2 sealed evidence sleeves. Grant was already positioning the leased van at an angle that kept the temporary registration plate out of the main photographs. The 2 showroom machines stood inside the garage beneath clear wrap. Their transit bolts remained installed. Sloan sent instructions by video call, but did not come in person. She told Grant the machines should face the street because natural light made stainless steel look expensive. Bryce unfolded the route map. Pamela filled drink dispensers. Grant pointed toward the equipment. "Lena, panels first." I wiped the stainless doors. "Packaging next." I removed the clear wrap. "Glasses need ice." I carried them to the driveway. 3 property owners were due. Grant continued rehearsing. "The route creates passive recurring income through distributed essential infrastructure." I collected the discarded plastic. He practiced describing me. "My operations partner handles maintenance execution." Not sister. Not guarantor. Partner. Now that the owners were coming. He handed me the dry dosing nozzle. "Put this on the technical table." I set it beside the used component I had brought from the service returns bin. Grant noticed the second nozzle. "What is that?" Comparison. "Won't need dirty parts." "Operating parts are dirty." He picked up the used nozzle and smelled detergent. His face tightened. "Remove it before guests arrive." I left it where it was. At 2:21, the first owner parked along the curb. At 2:34, the second arrived. The third came at 2:47. Pamela asked me to refill iced tea. Grant started beside the van. Open garage behind him. Machines visible. Map clipped upright. Bryce near the presentation board. I carried glasses. Cleared plastic packaging. Wiped a fingerprint from the nearest control panel. Grant described the 6 red dots. No owner interrupted yet. At 2:53, a courier vehicle stopped across the street. A man in a plain polo stepped out carrying 3 flat envelopes and a signature pad. Grant continued speaking. The route, he said, had entered a controlled expansion phase. The courier crossed between the leased van and the 2 spotless machines. I lifted the empty pitcher. He looked at Grant's name on the first envelope, then at the man standing beside the map. "Grant Holt?" Grant kept one hand against the van. "That's me." The courier extended the signature pad. 3 certified deliveries. Grant glanced at the property owners before touching the screen. Perfect timing. He signed without reading the sender lines. The courier scanned the first envelope, then the second, then the third. Each produced a small confirmation tone. Grant accepted them against his chest. "Anything else?" "No." The courier looked at the address on his device, confirmed the number on Pamela's garage, and walked back toward the street. No speech, no interest in the washers, no awareness that Bryce had stopped moving beside the route map. The vehicle pulled away. Grant turned toward the owners with the envelopes still in his hand. As I was saying, refinancing is the final piece connecting our existing route to a broader deployment schedule. Pamela stepped closer. "What are those?" "Closing materials." He looked down. The first preserved my denial of the equipment guarantee. The second addressed Evelyn's reserve claim. The third required Grant to preserve the route, payment, and delivery records tied to both matters. Grant's thumb moved across the first seal. His smile tightened. One of the property owners, Mr. Talbot, shifted his iced tea from one hand to the other. "Should we give you a minute?" "No." Grant slid the envelopes beneath his leather portfolio. "These are administrative." I placed the empty pitcher on the refreshment table. Pamela watched the edge of the second envelope disappear. That one has Mother's name. Grant adjusted the portfolio. It concerns the family account used for launch expenses. Which account? The reserve. Pamela looked at me. I picked up the tablet from beneath the utility handouts. Not the root table. The reserve file. Grant saw the screen and stepped away from the van. Lena. I handed the tablet to Pamela. The first page showed 6 months of statements. Every transfer connected to the apartment was marked by date and amount. No red circles. No comments in the margins. The property manager's written confirmation appeared beneath them. Residential lease payment. 1-bedroom unit. Pamela scrolled. The next page showed the electricity account. Then, furniture rental. Then grocery deliveries. She reached the first photograph. Grant and Sloane held opposite ends of the gray sofa inside the apartment doorway. Pamela stopped. Her thumb remained against the glass. Who took this? The furniture company. Grant reached for the tablet. Pamela moved it against her body. Does Sloane live there? It is a development unit. Does she live there? The space supports client acquisition. Bryce took 1 step backward. His shoulder touched the vinyl map. One of the red dots folded beneath the clip. Pamela opened the second delivery image. Grant carrying the boxed dining table. Sloane standing inside the apartment wearing his shirt. The unit number visible above her. Pamela looked up. You told me she used it for staging. She does. For furniture? For Investa experience. Mr. Talbot lowered his cup. Another owner, Mrs. Raines, looked at the 2 demonstration washers, then back at the apartment photograph. Grant noticed. He raised one hand. There is a difference between operational infrastructure and personal interpretation. We should not allow a domestic misunderstanding to interfere with the route review. I touched the audio file on my phone. Bryce's voice came through the small speaker. Grant, keep Pamela away from the apartment subject tomorrow. Pamela turned toward her brother. Bryce's recorded voice continued. She still thinks Sloane only uses it for client staging, and I am not losing my monthly introduction fee because Lena starts asking technician questions. Bryce moved forward. That was not the complete message. I lowered the volume, but did not stop it. The locations only need to hold together long enough for the refinancing package. Once funds clear, you can replace the showroom units and make the route real. The recording ended. No one spoke. The open garage carried every sound from the street. A lawn sprinkler clicked 2 houses away. Ice settled inside the glass dispenser. Pamela held the tablet with both hands. You were paid? Bryce pointed at Grant. He called it a referral arrangement. You knew about Sloane. I knew there was an apartment. You hid it. I believed you knew. You just said I didn't in the message. I meant details. What details? Grant stepped between them. This is a private compensation disagreement. Bryce introduced prospective locations. His fees are ordinary. Bryce looked at him. You said Pamela approved the reserve. I said the family had authorized startup capital. You said all of them signed off. Pamela's voice flattened. I did not authorize you to pay Bryce. Grant turned toward her. You approved the route. I approved using a portion temporarily. $34,000 is not a portion. Evelyn stood inside the open front doorway. I had not seen her leave the rear room. She wore a light sweater over her house dress and held one hand against the doorframe. Grant's face changed when he noticed her. Grandma, you should sit down. It was all of it. Pamela moved toward her. Mother? Evelyn raised one hand. Do not explain my money while I am standing here. The property owners remained near the folding chairs. No one pretended not to hear. Grant picked up the leather portfolio. This is exactly why serious financial matters should not be discussed in an emotional setting. I placed Bryce's monthly payment record beside Pamela's tablet. 3 transfers. Same amount. Same week each month. Pamela read the recipient name. Bryce stopped blaming the audio and began blaming the source. Where did you get that? from the business preparation records Grant attached to my registration. You went through private accounts. The payment summary was included in the refinancing package under introduction costs. Grant spoke over him. Those were customer acquisition expenses. Pamela looked at Bryce. You let me praise him in front of the family while you collected money to hide his apartment. Bryce's face reddened. You represented Evelyn's reserve as approved business capital. I never said you could take a fee. You told me the family was behind the project. I said we were helping Grant. You signed the transfer requests. Pamela turned toward Grant. You told him I signed? Grant lifted both palms. This is becoming unproductive. Mrs. Raines set her cup on the refreshment table. Are the 6 laundry locations connected to any of this? Grant faced her immediately. No, the operating route is separate and remains viable. He reached for the vinyl map. This is the actual business. I picked up the first utility table. Grant watched me. Not frightened yet. Technical information still belonged to the category he believed he could dismiss. He touched the red dot labeled Meadow Court. 4 washers at this location. I handed the table to Meadow Court's owner, Mr. Talbot. He read the first row. Claimed machines, 4. Claimed start date, March 4. Minimum monthly water required, 12,240 gallons. Actual water change, -900 gallons. Installation record, none. He looked at Grant. You told the lessor my building was active? It was a committed launch site. I told you we were not proceeding. The refinancing package reflects pipeline value. It says operating. Grant pointed at a smaller line beneath the red dot. Operational classification is flexible during deployment. No, Mr. Talbot said, it is not. I gave the second owner her sheet. No plumbing modification, no drainage connection, no service ticket, no new utility load. The third owner received the email exchange confirming that Grant had permission to photograph machines near the loading entrance, not install them. He read his own sentence aloud. Photographs do not constitute an installation agreement. Grant moved closer. We were building a staged proof of concept. You listed me as a customer. A future customer. The lender document says current. Grant reached for the presentation board. His fingers missed the lower clip. The map tilted. Bryce caught it before it fell. For the first time that afternoon, Grant thanked no one. I placed the used dosing nozzle on the technical table. Beside it, the clear sample from Grant's kit. 1 stained, 1 untouched. Mrs. Raines picked up the clean component. What does this show? Grant labeled it as having completed more than 400 cycles. And? Detergent passed through the used one. I pointed to the blue stain inside the chamber. Hard water passed through the threads. The gasket was compressed inside a line. The check valve edge wore unevenly. She looked at Grant's nozzle. This one? No mineral film, no chemical staining, no compression mark. Grant gave a short laugh. A replaceable nozzle is not the route. No. I placed the serial report beside it. This is 2 serials remained in showroom inventory. The written confirmation appeared under the first pair. 2 more serials belonged to machines removed from service and scrapped months before Grant's claimed launch. The disposal tickets carried dates, photographs, and my employer's release number. A 5th serial belonged to a model manufactured after the date Grant claimed it had entered the route. The remaining list had no installation intake through my employer, though Grant had named that company as the service provider. No serial acceptance. No water meter photographs. No drainage tests. No service tickets. No cycle records. Mr. Talbot turned pages slowly. You have records for all of this? For what the documents show. Grant stepped toward him. Lena has assembled fragments outside their commercial context. I opened the route table. The context is 24 machines operating at 6 buildings. Projected to operate. The guarantee says operating. Terms evolve. The water did not. He looked at me. Not the property owners.
Not Pamela.
Me.
You think a spreadsheet makes you an executive now?
No.
I kept my hand on the table.
I think washers need water. Mrs. Raines looked again at the monthly totals. Grant pointed at the figures. Blended building consumption cannot isolate root performance. That is why I used minimum estimates. You selected numbers to create a result. The smallest cycle volume you gave me, the lowest water setting supported by those models, no extra rinse cycles, no leaks, no maintenance flushes. I turned the page. Your 14 washers still require more than 42,000 gallons each month. He shook his head. Across the portfolio. Yes. And you cannot prove none of that water existed. All 6 owners deny operating installations. Mr. Talbot placed his sheet on the table. I deny it. Mrs. Raines followed. So do I. The 3rd owner lifted the email Grant had sent him. You asked to take photographs. That was all. Grant pressed his lips together. His eyes moved toward Bryce. Bryce looked away. Pamela had lowered herself into one of the folding chairs. Evelyn remained in the doorway. The route map stood between the demonstration washers. 6 red dots. 0 operating locations. Grant's hand entered his jacket and came out with his phone. This can be corrected. He opened the lesser portal. The same status remained beneath the payout request. Disbursement. Unavailable during ownership review. He tapped the request again. The page refreshed normally. Same sentence. Grant looked at me. You triggered this with incomplete information. I denied a guarantee I did not sign. You withdrew maintenance support during a financing event. I never provided maintenance support. You let owners believe the route was invalid. They read their own records. His thumb moved across the screen. An email window opened. He began typing. Bryce leaned close enough to see it. What are you doing? Preserving the company's claim. Grant sent the message before anyone could stop him. The lessor's activity notice reached me seconds later because my denial case remained connected to the file. His statement said the route had failed to complete installation because I had abruptly withdrawn technical support and contacted customers in bad faith. Grant looked up. There. Now they have both sides. My employer's service summary was already part of the case. I opened the attachment on the tablet. No installation ticket. No serial intake. No meter photograph. No drainage test. No service acceptance. The lessor's reply did not arrive immediately. Routine reviews did not move at the speed of driveway arguments. Grant used the silence. He stepped closer to me and lowered his voice. 40%. I thought I had misheard him. What? 40% ownership. Pamela looked up. Grant continued quietly. Operations Director. Full mechanical authority. Your certification becomes part of the company profile. We repay your expenses before profit distribution. I said nothing. He mistook that for negotiation. I will publicly identify you as co-founder. Behind him, the owners were gathering their papers. Grant moved into my line of sight. You wanted recognition? Fine. You have it. The words did not sound generous. They sounded purchased. You called my work lower-level execution 20 minutes ago. That was presentation language. You called my credit idle capacity. Because I was trying to build something for all of us. You copied my signature. We can replace the guarantee with an ownership agreement. There is no route. There can be. With whose money? He glanced toward Pamela. Only for a moment. Enough! I looked at the demonstration machines. Transit bolts still installed. No drains. No water. One extension cord powering 2 bright control panels. Grant leaned closer. You already built the evidence system. That is the difficult part. Stay. Help me convert this. Convert. The same word he had used for my credit. He had never believed I was small. He believed my work belonged to whoever spoke about it confidently enough. You knew I was qualified, I said. Of course. And you still placed me beneath the debt. I placed you beside the opportunity. No, you placed my name under it. His jaw tightened. This is your final chance to stop reacting like an employee. A new portal notice appeared. The lessor had acknowledged Grant's email and requested completed installation tickets, meter photographs, serial acceptance records, and proof of active customer sites. The notice did not argue with him. It asked for predecessor documents. Grant read it over my shoulder. He scrolled. Nothing else. Those records can be reconstructed. Mr. Talbot heard him. No, they cannot. Grant turned. The owner folded the utility table once. You cannot reconstruct an installation at my building. Mrs. Raines picked up her handbag. Remove my property from every presentation. The third owner pulled the vinyl map from the clip and tore off the corner containing his address. Not dramatically. One slow pull. He set the piece on the table. My building was never part of this. Bryce began gathering his own papers. Grant saw him. You are not leaving. Bryce did not stop. You told me the route was funded. You brought the owners. You told me installations were scheduled. You collected the fees. From Capital, Pamela approved. Pamela stood. I did not approve your fees. The voices crossed. Grant blaming Sloan for furnishing choices. Pamela demanding Bryce's payment records. Bryce asking for written proof that the reserve had been authorized. Mr. Talbot requesting removal from the lender file. Evelyn telling Pamela to bring her account folder inside. No single collapse. 4 people trying to move the load away from themselves. I closed the utility binder. Grant stepped in front of me. You cannot leave. Yes. You are named in the company. The lessor is reviewing that now. The presentation is not finished. The owners are leaving. We can reschedule. With which locations? His face emptied. Not softened. Emptied. The polished words had reached the edge of what they could cover. I carried my tool bag into the garage. One toolbox remained near the rear wall. Grant had filled it with hoses and fittings for the presentation because the red case carried my employer's old service sticker. I removed the staged parts. Empty hose, unused clamps, clean valve. I placed them on the workbench. Then I loaded my actual tools. Meter, insulated drivers, valve keys, pump puller, serial scanner. The last item was Roy's thermos. Pamela followed me into the garage. You planned this. I checked the records. You knew the courier was coming. Grant confirmed the delivery window. You could have warned us. The notices were addressed to him. You let Grandma hear everything. Her money paid for it. Pamela pressed one hand against the workbench. Grant made terrible choices, but you are destroying what is left. What is left? Family. I closed the toolbox latch. Grant entered behind her. His phone remained in his hand. The payout page still displayed the same sentence. Lena, do not make a permanent decision because of one failed launch. 6 non-existent locations. We can rebuild. Not under my name. I offered ownership. After the notices arrived, I offered you a future. You offered me the debt first. Outside, the property owners started their cars. Bryce stood near the curb making a call. Evelyn had gone inside with the reserve folder. The map leaned sideways between the washers. Grant raised his voice. You walk away now, and Grandma's repayment becomes harder. The repayment claim is already active. You do not know what will be recovered. No. I lifted the toolbox. But I know who spent it. He reached for the handle. Not grabbing me, only trying to stop the box from moving. I shifted it out of his reach. Pamela said my name. Grant said it again. I carried the toolbox toward the truck. The lessor's next update appeared before I opened the passenger door. My disputed guarantee status had changed. Name removal pending final document review. Not complete. Not yet. Enough to show that Grant's email had not restored the payout. I placed the toolbox in the truck bed. Grant followed me to the driveway. Think about what you are throwing away. I turned once. the leased van behind him. Two machines that had never completed a paid cycle. Pamela, holding the apartment tablet. Bryce's torn address corner beneath the refreshment table. $34,000 routed into another household. $68,200 placed beneath my copied signature. Grant waited for me to answer in the language he understood. Leverage. Position. Growth. I gave him the only sequence that remained. The lessor has frozen the guarantee review. Grandma's repayment claim is active, and I have one toolbox left to load, so you can explain your growth strategy after I drive away. The lessor did not remove my name on the driveway. That took 9 business days. The status Grant saw had been provisional, based on the missing installation records and the dispute package. Final removal required the lessor to compare his application against the showroom inventory, the property owner's statements, my closed registration, and my employer's service archive. I checked the portal once each morning. Not every hour, not every time my phone moved. The first update confirmed that no listed machine had a completed delivery acceptance bearing my signature. The second confirmed that the 2 demonstration units remained distributor property. The third accepted the disposal records for the 2 serials I had removed months earlier. Grant submitted replacement spreadsheets. They listed revised launch dates and described the 6 properties as development locations instead of operating sites. The lessor compared those terms to his original application. He had certified them as active. Changing the label after review began did not create installations. On the 9th morning, the portal displayed guarantor removed. Ownership interest? None. Service responsibility? None. The $68,200 no longer appeared beneath my name. I downloaded the determination and saved copies in 3 places. 1 on my computer, 1 on an external drive, 1 printed inside the file carrying my registration closure. Then I closed the portal. There was no celebration. My first service call that day involved a washer leaking through a split inlet hose. I shut the valve, replaced the line, photographed the meter, and entered the repair. The machine returned to service. Water went in, water came out. The ticket matched the work. That was enough. Evelyn's reserve took longer. The civil repayment agreement recognized $34,000 in unauthorized personal use. It did not make $34,000 appear immediately. Under that agreement, Grant surrendered the refundable portion of the van security deposit and any apartment deposit remaining after cleaning and early termination costs. Furniture still under rental agreement was collected and credited. He also authorized the sale of presentation equipment he personally owned, with the proceeds applied to Evelyn's claim. The remaining amount entered a monthly repayment schedule tied to his disclosed income. Evelyn received the first restored funds 3 weeks after the driveway presentation. Not all of them. Enough to cover medication, transportation, and the home care visits that Pamela had delayed. The account was changed, so no single family member could move money without a second notice. Evelyn selected an independent elder services bookkeeper as the reviewing contact. She did not choose me, I had offered. Then I was relieved when she chose someone whose job ended when the ledger balanced. Pamela remained her daughter. She could visit, bring groceries, sit through appointments. What she could no longer do was describe access as ownership. The lessor recovered the 2 demonstration machines from Pamela's garage. A flatbed arrived on a Tuesday morning. Grant was not there. Pamela watched the washers roll down the driveway with the shipping bolts still installed. She called me afterward. They took everything. They took their equipment. You know what I mean. I do. She wanted the sentence to include the van, Grant's reputation, the apartment, Bryce's introductions, and the version of herself who had believed protecting one child could remain separate from using the other. I did not carry all of that into the reply. You told Grandma her reserve was available. I believed Grant would replace it. He had no operating route. I didn't understand the machines.
You understood the transfers. Silence. Then, the familiar shift. Grant should never have copied your signature. But exposing him in front of those owners was cruel. There it was again. One action created the debt. Another made people see it. Pamela placed them on the same scale because balance looked kinder than responsibility. He scheduled the presentation during the delivery window, I said. You could have taken him aside. I did. He called my credit idle capacity. He was under pressure. He used Grandma's money for rent. He says Sloan pushed the apartment. He signed the transfers. You always reduce people to documents. No. Documents are what remained after everyone changed the explanation. Pamela breathed against the phone. I spent 20 years trying to keep this family together. I looked at the repaired inlet hose drying in the returns tray. Keeping Grant comfortable was not the same thing. She ended the call. Bryce submitted copies of his messages to show that Grant had described the reserve as approved capital. Pamela submitted Bryce's payment records to show he had profited from false locations. Sloan forwarded messages in which Grant called the apartment money his own investment funds. Grant responded that Sloan had selected the furniture and encouraged him to maintain an executive image. Each person produced records when the records could move responsibility away from them. None had been confused while the payments arrived. The confusion began when repayment needed a name. I did not follow the church committee discussion about Pamela. I did not attend the business breakfast where Bryce's referrals were reviewed. I did not ask which contacts stopped answering Grant. Those outcomes belonged to the people who had trusted them. My file needed only the determinations connected to my name and Evelyn's money. 4 weeks after the driveway presentation, Grant sent me a voice message. I saw the notification while replacing a dryer belt at a small apartment building. His message was 11 seconds long. The dryer here turns but doesn't heat. Which panel opens the exhaust channel? No greeting, no apology, no address. He still expected the answer to arrive because a machine had become inconvenient. I did not open the thread. The preview disappeared when another service notice arrived. That was the full extent of my interest in his converted garage. A dryer rotated damp clothes without heat. Grant could press the start button as many times as he wanted. I was no longer the missing service call. Pamela asked me to come to the duplex for the remaining tools 2 days later. I had left one red toolbox in the basement utility room and a crate of pump fittings beneath the stairs. Grant's truck was parked outside when I arrived. He stood beside the porch with his hands inside a sweatshirt pocket. No jacket, no gold-stamped portfolio. Pamela waited in the doorway. I walked past them carrying the empty crate. Grant followed me downstairs. Works. I'm collecting my tools. The lesser took the machines. They belonged to the lesser. You know the route could have worked. It had no locations. It needed time. It had Grandma's money. He stepped around the crate. Sloan is gone. That sounded like an appeal, or an invoice he believed should reduce his share. I lifted the toolbox from the utility shelf. You chose the transfers. She made everything expensive. You chose the account. Bryce said the properties were ready. You listed them as active. Pamela told me the reserve could be used. You copied my signature. His face tightened. You have your name cleared. Why are you still doing this? Doing what? Talking like I'm a file. I tested the toolbox latch. It held. You changed the story every time the previous one stopped working. I made mistakes. You made selections. He looked toward the stairs. Pamela stood above us listening. Grant lowered his voice. You think you're better than everybody because you can fix things. No. I lifted the toolbox. I stopped agreeing that fixing them made me responsible for what you broke. Pamela moved aside when I reached the top step. The final crate went into the truck bed. The toolbox sat behind the passenger seat. Roy's thermos remained inside the duplex kitchen cabinet. Pamela had taken it from the garage after the presentation and placed it beside Evelyn's tea tins. I entered the kitchen and picked it up. The steel was cold. One dent near the handle.
coffee residue dark around the lid seam. My initials beneath the base. LH. Pamela stood behind me. That belongs to the family. Grandpa gave it to me. He taught Grant, too. He taught Grant how to change a faucet washer. That still mattered to him. I didn't say it didn't. Pamela looked at the thermos, then at me. You are taking everything connected to him. No. I placed the thermos inside my bag. I'm taking what is mine. Grant followed me outside. I closed the truck bed. Pamela came down the porch steps while I entered the driver's seat. The window remained raised. Grant stopped beside the door. He placed an open palm against the glass. Pamela did the same near the rear edge. Their mouths moved. My name. Wait, we need to talk. Family. I could hear only the muffled shape of the words. For years, one of them had spoken, and I had stopped whatever I was doing to translate the need into labor. A ride, a repair, a payment, a signature, a solution. This time, I started the engine. Grant pressed his palm harder against the glass. For a moment, his reflection covered the space where my face had been. Pamela kept her palm against the glass. I looked forward. The toolbox shifted slightly when I backed out. Roy's thermos rested upright in the cup holder. I drove away without lowering the window. I did not need Grant to admit that the route had never carried a load. I did not need Pamela to rename protection or Bryce to explain his fee. Their polished version could remain beside the machines that had never touched water. My name was no longer available as the missing input. Whatever stopped turning after that would stop without my labor beneath it. 3 months later, I rented a small workshop behind the plumbing supply warehouse. 1 roll-up door, 1 workbench, 2 metal shelves. Enough room to rebuild pumps without clearing somebody else's boxes first. The registration on the wall carried one name. Lena Holt. No partner. No family asset. No shared access. On the first Saturday, I cleaned Roy's thermos. Warm water. A narrow brush. A small amount of descaling solution around the rim. Coffee residue lifted from the rough seam beneath the handle. I did not polish the dents. 32 winters had put them there. Removing every mark would not make the thermos newer. It would only erase where the steel had carried weight. A used detergent nozzle lay on the bench beside it. Mineral crust around the threads. Blue stain inside the chamber. Gasket flattened from service. The attached ticket showed property address, serial number, actual cycle count, chemical setting. Technician Lena Holt. Across the workshop, a rebuilt circulation pump ran on the test stand. The bearing held a steady tone beneath the motor. I set down the brush and placed 2 fingers against the housing. Even vibration, normal heat, real load. Roy had taught me that a machine could keep moving long enough to fool the eyes. Grant had built his life around that interval. The polished panel, the bright display, the turning drum. Motion without useful work. I poured coffee into the thermos and tightened the lid. The steel remained scratched. The initials remained crooked. Outside, a delivery truck passed the open workshop door. Nobody called my name from the driveway. Nobody needed me to convert an emergency into unpaid labor. The pump continued running. I listened until the test cycle ended. Then I signed the service sheet beneath my own registration and closed the workshop door.